All right, good afternoon. My name is Katie Ensweiler. I'm the marketing manager here at VonLehman CPA and advisory firm. Some Zoom housekeeping items that everyone's heard time and time again. Keep yourself on mute. It'll just help the experience with all of the other attendees. Video is optional. If you want to have it, that is perfectly fine. And if not, perfectly fine as well. We are recording the presentation today. So if you need to jump off or if you miss a piece that one of our expert panelists goes through, that'll be available to refer afterwards. Also, I will send out the contact information for each of our panelists. So if you need a little bit more detail or have a follow-up question on anything they went over, they've all been very ready and willing to answer any questions that you may have. So today, obviously, we're going to go over effective needs for your organization, communication needs for your organization. Each organization has different needs, different strategies. What works for one is not going to work for the other and vice versa. So we are lucky enough today to have 3 panelists join us, give us kind of their tips and tricks, best practices, successes, and even be vulnerable enough to go over the failures that they've seen over the years. So before we get started, let's go ahead and go through introductions. Roger, as I said before, I'm going to pick on you first. So if you could do a quick intro, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. I'm Roger Bavik and president of Master Provisions. We're a 27-year-old faith-based organization here in Florence, and our job is to connect resources like food and clothing to people in need through partners. Our primary role here in our region is to collect high-quality surplus food to get it out through collaborative partners to over 67,000 people every single month. And I didn't want to do this job, the switch from Cincinnati Bell to Master Provisions. God made me do it.
Thank you, Roger, for all you do, and thanks for being a part of the panel discussion today. Kim, I'm going to head on over to you. If you could do a self-introduction.
Sure. My name is Kim Webb. I'm the executive director of the Emergency Shelter Northern Kentucky. We are Northern Kentucky's immediate low barrier entrance shelter for adult men and women experiencing homelessness. We have been around, this is our 14th year, and many people may or may not have heard that we are officially moving out of a building that was never designed to shelter. We are moving into our new state-of-the-art facility that will include Northern Kentucky's first daytime navigation and engagement center sometime later this fall. And we are excited to be part of the conversation. And thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kim. And last but not least, Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Pelicano, and I'm with DCCH Center for Children and Families. We're in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky. We're a multi-service agency. We've been around for 160 years, I think. No, we might be up to 170. And we started out as a traditional orphanage. We have morphed over time to really work in the mental health world. We have residential treatment for boys and girls 6 to 14 years of age who've been removed from their homes due to some pretty serious abuse, neglect, and that type of thing. We also have a therapeutic foster care program and an outpatient therapy center that is open to the public, and we take Medicaid. We're one of the few that do. So thanks for having me here.
No, thank you, Amy. We appreciate it. So before we dive into kind of the more technical questions, let's start more surface level. In terms of communication methods, can each of you go through which ones you are currently using and start however you want? Here, I'll pick on somebody. Kim, let's start with you.
Communication, ways we communicate. Clearly, we do a lot of social media. We have a strong social media base. We do what we hope to be a quarterly newsletter that goes out. If it's all successful, if all goes well here, we try to participate in a variety of ways with video. We're not the best at it. And we're always trying to pay attention. What's the new technology coming in and how does that relate to our donors and our volunteers and people that want to see what's happening in shelter life. Certainly COVID has reduced a lot of those communications and forced us to really try to think creatively on how we do that. So, for us right now, like I said, it's a lot of internal. We have a donor management system. So we do a lot out of that donor management system and our acknowledgements, social media, and just trying to do the best we can right now.
think you hit on a key word here, Kim, creative. I think we've all kind of had to tap into that a little bit the last year. Roger, what about you guys at Master Provisions?
Okay, we've definitely moved away from the thinking that the website is the primary means of communication. Social media is extremely important for all of us, and anything that we post on Facebook, we also post on Instagram. And we found that our audiences are very similar, and ladies between the ages of 35 and 54 constitute the bulk of the people that follow us. So we try to adapt our messaging to our primary audience as much as possible. Face-to-face communications are so important. So even when we can't get together with people, phone calls are terrific. And the networking groups, we believe that communicating through networking groups, letting your needs be known in a group context is important. If any of you are not going to CBC Connects, I'm looking over some of the names and a lot of you are involved. But we find that networking groups are great places to communicate needs that you have and what you're doing so that you can get bang for your buck of having more than one person at the same time hearing your message. We do written communications once a week. A prayer report goes out as a faith-based organization. And then we don't bombard people with newsletters and updates because we do so much social media. And we just send a quarterly newsletter and a quarterly what we call Next Step Missions newsletter. So our newsletters are not that frequent other than prayer. And we do emphasize prayer. And so I write a weekly prayer report that goes out, because what better way to communicate than to ask God to get involved?
Very true, very true. Amy, what communication methods are you guys seeing?
Yeah, we have moved into the Instagram and LinkedIn world. We have a really strong following in Facebook, and it's growing and building really fast on Instagram. LinkedIn lags a little bit. We question whether that is really our space, but we're using it nevertheless. We will post the same thing on all three social media channels. We also, we send out a newsletter like this, The Voice, twice a year. There is an appeal in it. And we also send a Christmas card at Christmas time, which is an appeal as well. But we do it in the form of a Christmas card wishing Christmas blessings. This past, 18 months, my team, I didn't say I'm the Director of Development and Marketing for DCCH. And this, during this time, we haven't been able to really meet with donors face to face. So, and I have sort of retooled a couple of my staff members to where, like our volunteer coordinator, we're not having on grounds volunteer opportunities. Our mentors cannot come in and meet with the kids. We've really isolated the kids pretty well to keep them healthy. And so we have been calling every donor, every single donor for every single gift. And that's been really important, and it's been really helpful. Our individual giving was up tremendously last year, in this last fiscal year, which just ended. And I think that's attributable to the amount of, face-to-face or email, one-on-one communication that we're doing. But we also send out a monthly e-blast to about 3,000 email addresses, and they're all in our database. They're not purchase lists or anything. They're our friends. What else do we do? We do a lot.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, we're in the middle right now. We did this last year. I ordered 2,000 just fold over note cards with our logo on it. And between my staff, and we asked our closest volunteers to write thank you notes to our top 2,000 donors and volunteers. And that was an arduous task. We had tremendous volunteer engagement with that, but that was another sort of thing. We had to think outside the box. How can we really reach out to people in a special way. And so we just started it again last week.
The handwritten note is kind of a lost art, so it's a nice touch for sure.
And I want to add too, because like we're like the note card things too, is we're kind of doing the same thing. But the other thing that I started doing, and we just did this at our staff meeting, is handed out the note cards to our staff and asked them to spread kindness in our community to our community partners, so that, if you had a positive interaction or you just wanted to share some gratitude with the community partner that you had worked with, just to do that, just for some sunshine. I try to do every other Friday, like just a random phone call on a Friday for no ask,
Right.
just thank them, whether it's a community partner, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's a staff person, a board member, just a random person, just to check in and just say, hey, you know what, I just wanted to stop and say hi, that I was thinking of you today. That is getting a lot of, I feel so much out of that. And the people that I'm making the calls to, I think we as an organizations should also help to assist and lift up other organizations that are struggling. So yeah, so for us, that's become part of our culture here too.
Yeah, those personal reach outs are always nice and mean so much. I'm going to shift over to Roger real quickly. You mentioned a lot of different methods. You use social media, your prior emails that you send out, also the importance of networking groups. How does your message differ with the different outlets that you choose to relay your message on?
Definitely, if it's written, we try to be extremely judicious with words. Don't use a lot of words on written correspondence. It bogs people down. So try to be very concise, bullet points, and on our Facebook, Instagram, and try to get video in there and try to keep the video short. Megan and I always take turns, and we try to keep it less than a minute, even less than 30 seconds. The raw video is very effective, communicating from the heart, communicating with passion. And like on LinkedIn, when I use LinkedIn, my posts get nearly 3 to 4 times as many views and likes if I use some video with the post. So I think that's real important to remember as far as when we communicate our needs. Put the need or the story out there in a video format, and you can tie the story and the need together when you're talking to people.
We're kind of an instant society, so seeing that video and getting the message across very quickly seems to speak well to a lot of audience members.
Yes.
I'm going to circle back on something Kim had mentioned before. You had talked about random calls where you're just calling, kind of reaching out to people, no ask, just kind of keeping in touch. So curious as to how you determine the needs and plans if it doesn't always go in the moment or desperate. Is it important to show the desperation, or do you just kind of convey your needs as they come across?
I think for us, it's season specific. So, when the weather is bad, people tend to think of homelessness and people experiencing homelessness in a different way than that. So there is a level of high critical need, right? Other daily use needs may be pretty light and cheerful. So we have a weekly We Need Wednesday posts that go up that we talk about and make it really easy for donors and supporters and how they can do it. They can shop our wish list. They can donate to our PayPal and we'll take care of purchasing the item. That allows us on that Wednesday to really focus on what the critical need of an item is. So for example, like right now we need shaving cream. And so, that we can identify with in-house and say, all right, this week's message is going to go out. Sometimes like the randomness in the phone calls is, I think, an executive director, it's our responsibility and sometimes our skill set that we know what each talent someone has and we kind of pull it all together. So I'm sure there's a lot of head shaking with Roger and Amy. We know our board, we know our donors, we know who has the ability to give and what they can give and what our need is and how to match them. Some days that's kind of where I say I have the best job in the world. We have a shelter full of people that are in crisis and we have a Northern Kentucky community that is so generous. And so it's my responsibility, or I take ownership for kind of, pulling the two together and then tailoring the message that goes with it. I think the other thing is that we spend a lot of time about person-centered language. And so if anybody's is curious about what that is really identifying, anybody who's met me knows that I'm 6'2", I'm tall, or so they tell me. And so, I am not tall Kim Webb, I am Kim who happens to be tall, right? So person-centered language and that messaging is also part of our conversations with everybody. And actually the Center for Disease and Control, CDC, just issued new guidance with person-centered language on how to talk about the populations and the people that we're serving, so that it is not that dark and dreary savior complex that we all have to come in and save people. And I think that is something we pay a lot of attention in-house here, about how the language we use when we talk about the people experiencing homelessness. Our guests is how we call them, when they enter the door. So it's really, I can't say that we're communicating every day. There's a new communication, a way to communicate, a way of how to communicate it, and so it's just our responsibility to just kind of stay up with that and really know the people that we're talking with people and not at them. I think is kind of the other big thing is, I try to treat, our culture is to treat everybody the same. When you come in our door, we're going to trust, value, and respect you. No matter if you're a client, a donor, a volunteer, a staff person, a board member, that's our culture in-house.
Yeah, I don't think you want to be over dramatic in putting appeals out there. You want to be realistic, but you don't want to be sensational. And the life impact, though, there's an emotion there when, for us, especially when we have 2/3 of our followers are ladies, and ladies by nature being more relational, the relational impact of what we're doing, it's important for us to communicate that, but not sensationalize it. Not you're going to save the world if you donate to us, but for $19.94, you can help 100 people with food, and tie the needs in a practical way to how a donor can make a difference.
Yeah, we really, especially the last couple of years have shifted. We used to tell the sort of woe is me story a little too much, I think. And so we've shifted to let's tell those positive outcomes and connect it to here's how that happened. It was, through the generosity of our community. It was thanks to you, but people love we have amazing success stories, and through telling that story, you're definitely putting in there, this child came from this background, but here's the outcome. Here, they are able to do this and this and this now. They've moved on to a foster family or return to home, and we think it's really important to be telling the positive stories and sharing joy.
And
to kind of
this
stick
is
with
I'm sorry, go ahead, Katie.
No, go right ahead, Roger. I was going to shift gears a little bit, so please.
We
go
knew
ahead.
this would happen on Zoom, so I'm sorry about that.
Don't
But DCCH and Master Provisions, that partnership, when you communicate needs, we're always looking for ways to communicate how us working together is meeting needs for more than one organization. And so DCCH, a couple years ago, they were getting their food to take care of these kids from a different source. And once they started partnering with us, they saved over $1,000 a month. And we told that story with their permission. And so we're helping them have more money available to meet their core mission needs. And we're just telling the story how, hey, we're providing food to great organizations like DCCH, and we're helping each other. I think that's real powerful in communicating needs.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I was going to at some point mention our partnership because it really is a blessing to DCCH,
And I think that that's the communication that it is with our community partners, right? You have to invest the social capital with your partners. I know for us, when the shelter shut down for COVID, and the idea was born to use a convention center. When you build that social capital with your community partners and you make the effort and the time to do that and find ways, when the chips are down, people step in. And we had almost 17 nonprofits helping in that space at the convention center that had never been done before. And it really allowed to showcase the needs of each agency, what each agency does, and why it's important for there to be, a crisis response system, and that language of how we report and how we fit into the system, instead of I just do this, because it takes all of us, right? None of us are going to solve any of these issues individually, but we also have very specific talents that each agency does. And so when you lean on the agencies that have those talents, it's where the magic occurs. And you can, I tell folks all the time, you have to spend time with your community partners. It can be a lot. I mean, when you're busy, but like for Roger and stuff like that, if you don't spend time with your community partners and communicating with them, then there's a real missed opportunity to really leverage and showcase a greater need that we all have.
And in times like that, it becomes more of a we, not a me. So helping each other together is very, very important. Amy, real quick, pre, during, and I don't know if we're post-COVID, what have you determined to be the most effective method of communication, and why was it the most effective? I know you talked about telling that positive story instead of more of the
Right.
not negative, but the other side of things. So what method was the most effective for your organization?
I think it's the individual, making individual contact with donors. So it is the thank you notes that, and I think it's really important that to note that we've got volunteers, board members, writing these thank you notes and signing them. I am Susan Smith, a volunteer. I'm a member of the Halo League, or, I'm a mentor. And I think that's important for our donors to get that thank you, but also the fact that it is from somebody who's not necessarily staff. And, the individual phone calls that we've been making, are just thank you. How are you doing? Our kids are doing well. Here's what's going on at DCCH, and finding out a little bit about them, asking those questions. And I think that really helps. We leave, you get a lot of voicemail, but we leave a message just saying, I'm just calling to say thank you for everything that you've done for us this past year, or whatever specific we want to say. And just, I think hearing that message is enough. I always say, feel free to, give me a call. Here's my cell phone number. But I follow up with an email if we have an email address also. And I think, and not just me, but other members of my team are doing this as well. Like I said, my volunteer coordinator has been transformed into a relationship manager, and she's doing a great job. So same thing with our grant writer. I've sort of put some of that on her. So we've had to sort of diversify, but it's really those individual connections that I think make a huge difference.
I like relationship manager, because that's exactly what it is at the end of the day, is massaging that relationship and making sure that story is told. Roger, question for you. Oftentimes we are more compelled to give or understand a need if it's accompanied by a story. How do you go about this approach? How do you tell the story in a way that effectively communicates the need?
At Thanksgiving time every year, we team up with Crossroads and we mobilize an effort to get out Thanksgiving boxes to people in need. So we just share the overall community needs story, and we give people an opportunity to meet that need in the context with sharing the story of these 500 families. This is what it's going to be like for them. You can make a difference by providing a turkey in this list of items. So giving people an opportunity to respond while telling the story. We tend to focus more on the macro level of meeting needs because we're helping support these 225 organizations who are on the front lines every single day. But communicating the story and tying that in with a specific way that people can help meet that need is extremely effective way to communicate.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we've discussed the effective ways of communication. What are the ineffective ways? How have you guys had to kind of pivot or change the way you go about relaying that message? Kim, let's go ahead and start with you.
I knew you were going to give me that one.
I picked on Roger for intros. I'll pick on you for this.
Oh my gosh, ineffective ways. Ineffective ways. If your communication is only centered always on an ask, you're in trouble. I mean, if you are going to ask and ask and ask and ask, that doesn't bode well. I think that people start dropping off. Other ineffective ways is when you're not mindful of the audience in which you're trying to convey a message to. So what works for, like Roger said, someone, a woman who is very in tune to the story, and you show up with all these statistics, that doesn't help. And likewise, if you go to the business side, right, where like we're beginning in the stages of our capital campaign, right? So there's an element of statistics. And so you have to find that balance. And if you swing one way or the other, it can really have some negative impact on the responses that you get in your communication. I think the other negative thing internally is if you're not providing enough positive support to your staff, that it is our job or to be the cheerleader. It is our job to show up, and it is our job to, as an organization, to treat the staff much like we treat the guest, right? So that comes in our doors. So are there extra touches we can do? Effective communication is not barking orders at a staff person and demanding they show up, right? I mean, like, there has to be, just mindfully of who you're talking to and understanding what's happening in the world and what people are going through before you even really open your mouth and say that. I think ineffective communication is when you are negative on your social media, when you're out and about tearing down other partners, when you are out and about focused solely on your agency's wins, and not recognizing that sometimes it's a group effort, and giving credit where it's due. If you don't do it, that will catch up with you eventually. You will not be seen as a collaborative partner, and someone who doesn't play well in the sandbox, for lack of a better term.
And celebrating the needs of others celebrates the needs of the community. So telling that message for everybody is very important. Amy, I'm going to pick on you. Roger, anything else to add?
I just hit 4 years with DCCH, and when I started, what was happening was there were appeals going out, like a letter, your traditional letter appeal, and then 3 newsletters that had no giving envelope in it, and so not an opportunity to give, and no, sort of appeal story. And I said, hey, what if we combine the fall appeal with the newsletter and kind of put it in there and see what happens? And it worked great. So I would say, for me, those, I get them all the time, just sort of that that letter comes in the mail, you open it up and you skim through it. And I have found that to not be as compelling and successful as, now we're doing 2 newsletters that are very robust and, tell some awesome stories. We do say we need support, through that. And there's a giving envelope in there. And so I think we switched from something that was happening to something that was more successful. So
I would say the days of relying on mass emails are over. I think people turn emails off a lot. Even on direct mail, we haven't had much success unless we personalize and target a more targeted group of people to communicate our needs to. But when we take time to write a personalized message along with an appeal, it works well. This past year, we had some postal service issues, and our spring appeal never even got out to a lot of the people that we intended it for. But personalization is important in whatever you do, and knowing the people you're trying to communicate with and hitting them differently. I have a lot of people that a quick text about a need is all they need, and that, and so you can text to them, and that's extremely efficient. But you don't want to rely on that for everybody either.
I think timing is crucial. I mean, timing of and some days there's no rhyme or reason to it, right? Like any one of us can have a really silly idea and put it out there, and it can be wildly successful, and something that is planned for, prepared for, a newsletter, a video story, a vignette, whatever, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. And you're like, okay, so got to roll with it. And you just got to continue to do that. I think for us too, it's also, we have a lot of success when we have our guests do thank you cards. So we will put some out and we will just ask them to, just because we protect their privacy. And I'm sure Amy's in the same boat, like you're really, I don't want to put our guests out there. Like we have strict privacy policies and stuff in place to protect them. So when we do have an opportunity for a guest who is willing to share a story, hold on a second. Can you give me a few more minutes? That's why I can't wait for a new building, just saying. So no more shared offices. I'm sure I'm going to miss this in some capacity. But, finding ways to engage the guests and the clients that we serve, our guests, in thank yous that mirror and fit the mission, their privacy, and what donors are craving. And so I think that is always, impactful. And I agree. Like when we got the keys to our new facility, first place I came was back here, and our guests were having dinner, and I had them do a video on Facebook Live, cheering and thanking people for the opportunity and what had been, what had transpired. So I think that is, as much as we know our donors want to see the guests, sometimes the understanding is we're kind of hands tied. It's hard to get a guest who's willing to share their story and do it. So
Kim, have you had to or found the need to work with a third-party consultant to help with any of your communication needs in the past?
Yes. I would highly encourage, that there are some identifying there are times when professionals are needed. They bring a lot of value to the conversation. And it is always it is what I have learned. It was probably the best investment for myself and for the org to hire a professional crisis response person. So someone who specializes in crisis and crisis communication, so that you are prepared and you have a slide deck. So I even know the language now. You have a slide deck. So how you communicate, the tone, your posture. But yes, definitely, we have done it. You have to be judicious about it and recognize that sometimes it is just out of anyone's league, especially here at the emergency shelter. We'll be, for the first time, we'll be able to actually fund a consultant if anybody's interested, to help handle our social media, because it's getting to a point where it also, on the positive side, not just the crisis response side, but the positive side of a new building, everything that's going on, there comes a time where you just need to say, all right, I can't do it all, and let it go, and work with them to do it. Absolutely. Crisis response person, one of the best investments that I think anybody can learn and gain experience from.
So I know, Amy, you had mentioned earlier, and I have all these notes taken down, so pardon me while I try and decipher what I have written down here. But you said that you have a lot of success with calling donors, and you have logo cards that you have the thank you notes that your volunteers and things like that write on. How do you, and I'll get to the other two as well, how do you make sure your board, your staff, your volunteers, anybody out in the community is telling that right story? What do you do to kind of arm them with that information?
Oh, there's an attachment.
Okay.
And yeah, there's an attachment with their list. And I wrote out, I think, 4 different ways of saying thank you and conveying what we want to convey. In addition, like in my email saying, will you do this, please? Here we are again. I have bullet points like, you want to thank them, make them feel valued, ask them if they have any questions about DCCH, So now I provide them with some scripts they can choose from to get them started, or to use, verbatim if they want to. So, yeah.
Awesome. No, that makes perfect sense. Roger, what about you?
I think being consistent across all boards, we could actually do a better job encouraging our volunteers to be storytellers for us. I think we give our board and committee members the information they need to be effective, but I think all of us that rely on volunteers need to remember that. How can we equip our volunteers to be more effective in sharing what our message is? But consistency in communications is real important. That presence is real important, where people know every Sunday there's going to be a scripture put out there by Master Provisions. Every Monday, this missions message is going to go out. But consistency, it's got to be up at the top. And even the mission and vision statement, I bet you that not all of our people could recite that. Everybody on our board and committee couldn't recite that. And it's only 16 words. So all of us can do a better job focus on how can we communicate it consistently and encourage our people to be better storytellers.
Yeah, Roger, that actually reminds me of the time I sat on a committee one time that at the beginning of every committee meeting, we recited the vision statement. It kind of drew us all together. It made us remember why we were there, what our focus was on, and try to kind of center us all on our focusing for the next hour for that meeting. So that's awesome. And Amy, you had mentioned this before. Kim, I'm giving you a warning on this one, and I won't make you go first, but I'm going to ask you guys to be very, very vulnerable and kind of walk us through maybe a big failure that you had with ineffective communication. Amy, I know you said that one of your biggest ones was the lack of envelope. You're telling your amazing story and putting asks out there and things like that, but not actually giving people that tangible way to give. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, or if there's another time that you can come up with. Roger, you had mentioned an issue with the postal office not having those sent out. So are there any other things that have come up where you guys have, when looking back on it, thought this is where we should have done it differently?
Well, we had one major, it was a crisis communication issue. And fortunately, I have had education in that. But I also called on a good friend who is a communications expert. And it was our settings in Facebook. We had it so anybody could post on our wall. And this is how we discovered that this is a problem. There are people out there who view foster care as these people are going and stealing the children and giving them to someone else. And it's a huge movement out there. And some woman from Nevada posted this nasty gram, and it was on a Friday night, posted this really nasty reply to one of our foster care messages. And it just went viral. We had hundreds and hundreds of people commenting. By the time we noticed it on Sunday night, and so we had to really, that was a big boo-boo. So we've changed that to where, we approve anybody that wants to comment on our page. We have to review that. So that was, I think, a big faux pas. And we had to do a lot of, we chose to do a lot of sort of, trying to fix it, and putting out, this is what foster care is about. Here's why children enter the foster care system, and putting out facts about it, for quite some time on a very, very consistently, like saying, here's why kids are here, so trying to correct what was all over our Facebook page. So.
Yeah, that's hard. That is hard. And it's nice to have someone with crisis management there to help. Yeah, it's a lot to take on. Kim, Roger, anything to add?
I think one for us was, I think it was 2019 on Giving Tuesday. I believe it was Facebook promoted they were going to match the gifts with these dollars. And you kind of had the impression, oh, anytime Giving Tuesday, you can make a gift and it'll get matched. But the reality was it was a national competition for a relatively small amount of dollars. And unless you got your gift in the wee hours, you really weren't matched. And I think we put it out there as if, yeah, you can give all day long and you'll get your gift matched. But and it didn't turn out that way. So it was an unintentional misinformation, but it was a communication that was like, a couple people were like, oh gosh, I wouldn't have given this if I didn't know I wasn't going to get matched. And so that happens. But so then what we did is we did our own internal match last year, and it worked much better, where we could control, and indeed dollars up to, let's say it was 5,000, could get matched, and internal matches worked well to help meet needs.
And miscommunications are such honest mistakes, and they're going to happen, but it's how you handle it. So it sounds like you did a great job. Kim.
I think a couple things come to mind is not being clear in what you're asking for. So then people feel like they want to give you everything, right? So we have needs cards that we hand out. So staff hands them out. They've got QR codes, really simple, easy. Take you directly to our PayPal, take you to our Amazon wish list, sign up for our meal calendar, make it as easy as possible to go in a pocket. I may or may not, well, I did, honestly, was at the end of winter, we were having a spoon crisis, and I thought it would be really fun to ask for spoons in our Amazon wish list. What I didn't do is cap the number of spoons that came in. So the graphic was really great. It was a snowman that was holding 2 spoons, and you can find it out there. Very popular graphic. It goes out on Facebook, it goes out on Instagram, it goes out on Twitter. So popular that we, Alanis Morissette, song, 10,000 spoons and all you need is a knife. I kind of did the flip side, as we had 10,000 knives and we just needed spoons. Oh yeah, we got like 30,000 spoons delivered to shelter. So yeah, I kind of had to avoid shelter life for a while here because people, my op manager was there's a lot of spoons in a small space. But I think that was kind of something to be mindful of like when you're doing the wish list, you better make sure that we have a correct number and have a cap so that like it stops. And God bless people, because seriously, we have a lot of spoons. And they came just like that. So there was no planning. I mean, they just showed up. So that's a funny one. I think a more serious note is probably when you're in the midst of a media crisis, for things, it's important to stand up for yourself and find the ground to stand up for your agency. and to do that. And there was a time when I first started that didn't happen. And I look back at that as a learned experience about how to effectively stand up for your agency, for what the mission is, for the people you serve, for the work that's done when things are being leveled at you in a very public way. And this was way when I first started, so way back, and I was fairly new to it. That it just how quickly, like Amy said, it can go sideways. Facebook and social media can work for you, and people can use it fairly quickly to turn it on you. And even when you're not, it's not something that it wasn't in our arena as an agency, but we were very much blamed for it, and some things were very much targeted at that. And I think that can be really hard to navigate and to know when is it appropriate to stand up, for your agency and take the heat for it and acknowledge that versus staying silent and just saying, this too shall pass, because there are still moments when that scenario rears its head, and you're like, man, I wish I'd have just stood up for us and said we don't shelter kids, or whatever that was. But we took a lot of heat for it.
It's nice that all of you are willing to be vulnerable and speak about the issues that have been caused maybe from a miscommunication or an ineffective communication. But on the flip side of that, what's your greatest success? Greatest communication success? 10 out of 10 would do it again. Roger, let's start with you.
Having somebody full-time on staff who's there to feel the pulse of your daily activities and communicate them effectively. So there's 2 family nurturings on here. I don't know if Victoria is one of them, but she went to family nurturing after being with us for 5 years. She did a great job of setting up our communications platforms, scheduling posts, getting things organized. And she made a big difference in our overall ability to communicate by having somebody on staff. There's benefits of contracting it out at a certain point, but I would much rather have somebody on your team who's there to constantly communicate effectively.
Amy, let's go to you.
Gosh, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think it's all of our efforts to reach out individually to donors and connect with them. Like I said, our individual giving when we just went through auditing, and the auditor wanted to know why there was such a big jump in individual giving last year. And I attribute it to the ramping up of individual, reach outs by multiple staff, volunteers, and trying to, touch everybody at least a couple times a year, which it takes a lot of time. But, my team's been working from home, and it's sort of been a mixed blessing because I can go and I can meet with the donor, and I have travel time there. I have the time there with the donor. I have travel time back, right? But at home, I can make 10 phone calls in an hour. I can actually reach out and touch more people with that time. So I think it's been more efficient, more effective. So, yeah.
Awesome. Kim, last but not least.
Biggest success. I think everything that Amy and Roger said, laying the groundwork, and our organization recognizing that there just comes a point where you need to have a dedicated person that can manage communications, and being able as an organization to work toward that. So we've had student interns, we've had Scripps Howard media interns, which have been fantastic. We've had high school interns, and you have them for such a short period of time, that it helps to kind of build the stage to having that person in-house, and, recognizing that it's needed, right, to effectively continue to communicate the needs, and turning it over to the people other staff, I think, is the other big win, is turning over access to those social media challenges, those social media things, and doing the graphics and doing all that, and trusting your staff and your board to that bringing them all together, they all have the skill sets to make it happen. I think that has been the best of the best.
Well, we are getting close on time, but I do want to get final thoughts from all three of you. So if you want to take just a couple minutes, maybe give some sign-off words, some words of encouragement, some best practices. And Roger, once again, we're picking on you.
All right, let's go. Since I'm Roger, let's go with 4 R's. I think your communications need to be regular, relevant, real, and readable. And not about Roger too. So I think they need to be other focused. And if you are a faith-based nonprofit, I see there are some faith-based on here. Never neglect the importance of prayer and communicating needs. We've seen a big difference the past 3 years since we've made prayer an integral part of our communications. I think that's extremely important. So don't hide your faith if you're a faith-based nonprofit, and just have that restrained humor too. Even though times are difficult, humor resonates with people. So if you can weave that in, I'm not always good at being restrained, those of you who know me, but humor, appropriate humor is always appropriate in your communications.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roger. Amy?
You're welcome.
I love the humor because my staff member who does our social media on Facebook and Instagram, she gets cheeky sometimes, and they're just fun, and people do love that. And then LinkedIn is a little more staid, but I would say dcchcenter.org. Visit us, like us, share our stories, and we will share yours. We will like you back.
And Kim?
Oh my gosh, closing remarks. We as an organization are on a journey unlike no other right now. We are accomplishing something together, both as an organization, as a community, in the building of a new shelter, and leaving a building that was never designed to shelter, although it's a nice building. And I'm petting the wall right now because we're continuing to love on it to get us through to our move. But it's been a really incredible experience for our organization to be part of this community, to withstand the changes and to be frontline and helping and assisting with basic necessities, to my staff for continuing to move ahead and show up for work, even when you didn't want to. When you talk about humor, I had a staff person tell me, some days I just want a marching band, just want some music just to thank me for showing up for work. So lo and behold, I came in, I played a little music. Everybody who came in the office, then I played a little music and just said, I just want to thank you for showing up, for getting out of bed today, for getting in your car, for getting out of your car when you got to work and coming into this building. So, it's just, we're on a wild ride right now. I hope everybody continues to follow us and share in the excitement of a community coming together to build a shelter. It is a once in a lifetime experience, and it's a positive step for our community for the basic needs. Like Amy, you can find us on social media, Emergency Shelter NKY. And, just continue to follow along. I post videos all the time of what's happening construction wise at the new location. That seems to really inspire a lot of people to see where progress is happening. And don't forget to take care of yourself. Mental health is important, and to make sure that in our field and anybody that you take care of yourself, because that's really, we have got to show up and be our best, and we need to take care of ourselves. And I think for a lot of us in the nonprofit, I'll speak for myself, is we tend to put ourselves last. And so it's really important. My message is, to take care of you so that you can continue to take care of those around you. And it's just, I want to thank CBC, VonLehman, for the opportunity to do for effective communication. Honored to be selected and asked to participate because, you know,
Ditto.
it's just, it is, you know, and to sit with Roger and Amy and all these individuals, it's just, you know, it is an incredible community to work and be part of here in Northern Kentucky. And there's just so much good things happening in our community, and we just need to continue to focus on them. So
I agree with everything Kim said. I love our community and I love CBC.
Same.
And VonLehman. Let's get a little BL love out there.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Kim, Amy, Roger. You guys were fantastic to work with, to plan the event, to execute the event. I think after watching this, hopefully people do understand that it's fun to have humor within things. We have to learn to laugh at ourselves in order to kind of move on. Please forgive me for reading off of my phone. Pat had some technical difficulties, couldn't get his video to work. So I told him I would just give the CBC updates for him. So they have some great events coming up. September the 16th, monthly luncheon at the Radisson. The topic is the Hayden at Roebling Point. That's from 11:30 to 1. September 21st, after hours social at Frost House at Roebling Point. That's at 4 p.m. I apologize. And for the first time, CBC will hold the Fall Golf Social at DeVue Golf and Event Center on Friday, October the 1st at 1 p.m. So feel free to check all of that out. Their website, cbcky.com. Fantastic resource. Make sure to follow them on social, as well as Master Provisions, Emergency Shelter of Northern Kentucky, and DCCH Center, and VonLehman. We would always appreciate the follows as well. So with that, we will conclude today's presentation. Covington Business Council, thank you so much for allowing us to partner on this event, to all three of our panelists, and I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Katie. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
bye.
God bless everybody.